Holding the trophy as the United States' oldest ever elected president, Joe Biden has had a fair share of public blunders that have drawn worldwide attention.
We'll teach Donald Trump a valuable lesson. Don't mess with the men in America unless you want to get the benefit.
We're going to rescue our economy. We're going to save our economy. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. There was never a greater economy, and now we don't.
The country is in chaos. We can't imagine what will happen tomorrow. This is a difficult time for the country. Our government can only talk nicely, but do nothing. Washington. As he orders airstrikes in a growing Middle East conflict, President Joe Biden faces fresh demands that he ask Congress to vote on a new authorization for military action before he proceeds further.
I'd ask about Venezuela. Is the president considering any steps to take against Venezuela, whether it's tightening sanctions, regarding the High Court's decision to uphold the ban on the only viable opposition candidate posing a challenge to Maduro?
The Maduro regime, when they signed on in October down in Barbados, made some commitments about opposition political parties, about free and fair elections and what all that meant. And they haven't taken those actions. Now, accordingly, they got till April to do so. So we have options available to us. I'm not going to preview any of those at this time, but we certainly have options with respect to sanctions and that kind of thing that we could take. They've got till April. They need to make the right decisions here and allow opposition members to run for office and release the political prisoners that they're holding right now. Thank you.
Those calls, however, are falling on deaf ears, with the White House insisting that the commander-in-chief already has approval to carry out the strikes from 2 authorizations for use of military force, or AUMF, votes more than 20 years ago in the wake of the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. This month, Biden ordered airstrikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen who have launched attacks on ships in the Red Sea, as well as on Iran-affiliated militia groups that have attacked U.S. personnel and facilities in Iraq and Syria, and after a drone attack in Jordan killed 3 U.S. service members and injured more than 30 others over the weekend, Biden vowed retaliation against Iran-backed militants who he said carried out the brazen assault. "We shall respond," he said.
Well, tensions are rising between militants and the U.S. tonight after the White House says 3 American service members in Jordan were killed in a drone attack today. Dozens more service members were also injured. In a statement, President Joe Biden blamed the attack on Iranian-backed militant groups and says the U.S. will hold those responsible accountable. These deaths are the first U.S. fatalities related to the Israel-Hamas war. While on the campaign trail today, President Biden said the U.S. will respond to the attack.
I've asked you for public silence for all 3 of those false soldiers. And we shall respond.
House and Senate lawmakers will receive a number of classified briefings about the deadly attack this week. Biden's vow comes just days after a bipartisan group of senators sent a letter urging him to come to Congress before he undertakes any further military action. The letter from Sens, Tim Kaine, Diva, Todd Young, R. Ind, Chris Murphy, D-Con, and Mike Lee, R. Utah, condemned the Houthi attacks and blamed the group and their backers, namely Iran, for escalating the situation in the Middle East. But, they said, unless there is a need to repel a sudden attack, the Constitution requires that the United States not engage in military action absent a favorable vote of Congress. We have long advocated for deliberate congressional processes in and authorizations for decisions that put service members into harm's way overseas, the senators continued. There is no current congressional authorization for offensive U.S. military action against the Houthis.
Your health comes first. If you're not healthy and you're not able to do the basic functions of your job, if you can't even pick up the phone and let someone know that you're unhealthy, that's reasonable. If you're in the hospital,
he's had prostate cancer for a month and a half. He couldn't pick up the phone in a month and a half.
I mean, if you're dealing with it on your own time and you're not missing work for a health condition, you actually don't have a legal obligation to tell your employer in the United States of America. It's something that protects employees from being retaliated against and fired for health conditions, which has been a problem. And that, labor groups have fought so that there are rights in place to prevent workers from being fired just because, they're experiencing some health problems. It doesn't feel right to me to attack someone because they're not healthy. And so if something malicious was done intentionally, of course he should be held accountable, but it just doesn't seem like that kind of a situation here.
Speaking to reporters last week, Lee lamented that Biden and other recent presidents have carried out a variety of military strikes under the 2001 and 2002 AUMFs that were written for the Iraq and Second Gulf Wars. In March, the Senate voted 66-30 to repeal the 2002 AUMF, and one passed in 1991 for the first Gulf War, but the legislation has stalled in the House. There are still questions that need to be answered. I want to know what the source of authority is. The Euro 1 and Euro 2 AUMFs have been used as the Swiss Army knife for every conflict out there, Lee said.
Well, a lot of what's going on up there on the frontier, which is in the border of Jordan and Syria and Iraq. It's right like a tri-border area there. Al Tanf is a base where we have some special forces and some other folks. And what they're trying to do is interdict ground shipments on Highway 1 and the highway that comes out of Iraq that goes all the way actually across the country into Iran. So by setting up choke point there, they can interdict ground shipments of weapons to ISIS and to other players in Syria. So the support base that got attacked is on the Jordanian side of that border. And it's called Rukban, R-U-K-B-A-N. You can look it up on a map and see how close it is. But you could sit very easily on the other side of that border in Iraq, where these groups, Kataib Hezbollah, is known to have been operating. KT McFarland, who was just on your air, was exactly right.
Across the Capitol, a group of nearly 30 House members, including some of the most liberal and most conservative members, sent a separate letter to Biden questioning the constitutionality of the airstrikes on the Houthis and demanding that he come to Congress before he launches additional strikes. As representatives of the American people, Congress must engage in robust debate before American service members are put in harm's way and before more U.S. taxpayer dollars are spent on yet another war in the Middle East, wrote the group of House lawmakers, who included liberal reps Pramila Jayapal, D-Wash, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, DNY, and Rashida Tlaib, D-Mitch, and conservative reps Marjorie Taylor Greene, Arga, and Andy Biggs, RRs. No president, regardless of political party, has the constitutional authority to bypass Congress on matters of war, the group wrote. Representatives Ro Khanna, D. Calif, one of Biden's key progressive allies, organized the letter. In an interview this month, Khanna was incredulous that the White House had not come to Congress even though it had been planning retaliatory strikes against the Houthis for weeks. This has been going on since December, Khanna said. They've been planning and talking to foreign leaders and coordinating the whole international campaign, and you aren't coming to Congress to see whether this is something that Congress would support.
And I'm very glad they didn't give me any notes, because if I did, I would have been reading. I would have been saying, thank you, here's Biden. Thank you. I saw something the other day that was incredible. He's taking questions. And again, I wouldn't talk this way, but he indicted me. Can you imagine? I got indicted. I'd never heard the Wharton School of Finance. They didn't have a subject on you get indicted. It wasn't like something you think about, right? My father, my mother and father, they're looking down. My son got indicted more than Alphonse Capone. Don't forget, Al Capone was the toughest, meanest guy. If you had dinner with him and if he smiled the wrong way, where he thought you were maybe smiling or about him or mocking him, you were dead. You're a dead person. Scarface, you ever hear? Al Capone, Scarface. That was where the movie came from. He had a scar from here to here, and he didn't get that scar from playing tiddlywinks. Do we agree? He got indicted one time. I got indicted 4 times for nothing,
Biden said in a recent letter to congressional leaders that last Tuesday he ordered strikes in Iraq and Syria against Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, a militia group he says is responsible for attacking U.S. personnel and facilities. He said he did so in accordance with the 2001 and 2002 AUMFs and to protect United States citizens both at home and abroad. The United States took this necessary and proportionate action consistent with international law and in the exercise of the United States' inherent right of self-defense as reflected in Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. Biden wrote the leaders. The United States stands ready to take further action as necessary and appropriate to address further threats or attacks.
And the former US president and current challenger Donald Trump has blamed Joe Biden for the attack, saying on social media 3 years ago Iran was weak, broke and totally under control. Thanks to my maximum pressure policy, the Iranian regime could barely scrape $2 together to fund their terrorist proxies. Then Joe Biden came in and gave Iran billions of dollars, which the regime has used to spread bloodshed and carnage throughout the Middle East. This attack would never have happened if I was president, not even a chance. Just like the Iranian-backed Hamas attack on Israel would never have happened. The war in Ukraine would never have happened, and we would right now have peace throughout the world. Instead, we are on the brink of World War III, is what Donald Trump said this morning.
Responding to Biden, Rep. Barbara Lee DeCalif, the only member of Congress to vote against the 2001 AUMF, told NBC News on Monday, the 2001-2002 authorizations should be repealed. Those authorizations I don't think are justified with regard to 2024. While he faces criticism from war-weary liberals and conservatives, some also blamed Biden for not being tough enough with Iran. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, RCI, Biden's former colleague in the upper chamber, argued in a floor speech last week that while Congress must keep a firm grip on the power of the purse, this is no time for 535 commanders-in-chief dictating battlefield tactics from halfway around the world. In a statement Sunday about the deaths of the service members, McConnell argued the Constitution gives Biden the clear authority to use military force when American lives and interests are under attack. But in the same breath, he accused Biden of failing to sufficiently exercise the authority he already has, criticizing his strategy toward the region.
With executive authority, or is there more you could do?
Not all I can do. Just give me the power. I've asked for the very day I got in office. Give me the border patrol. Give me the people. Give me the people, the judges. Give me the people who can stop this and make it work rationally.
There are some concern in the party about the possible escalation of military involvement in the Middle East.
There's concern. We'll see.
That's terrible to me. That's terrible. If they at the White House Communications Office want him to make news and want him to take questions, do it in a way where the American people, our allies and our adversaries can hear him clearly. And then you won't get all the questions as to his mental capacities because you could actually hear him if he's being coherent. I find it professionally insulting as somebody who used to work there that they think that this is good enough for the president to take a question like that when you can't actually hear him above the rotating blades. The other day, he was at the Nowhere Coffee Company. He answers a very important question about troops that have just been killed.
The cost of failure to deter America's adversaries was again measured in American lives. We cannot afford to keep responding to this violent aggression with hesitation and half measures, McConnell said in the statement. The entire world now watches for signs that the president is finally prepared to exercise American strength to compel Iran to change its behavior, he continued. Democratic Dell, Stacey Plaskett, who represents the U.S. Virgin Islands and serves on the House Intelligence Committee, also defended Biden's use of military force. I can't see the president coming to us every time there is an attack on Americans throughout the world, Plaskett said in an interview Monday before she received a briefing on the attack on service members. But, of course, he has his Joint Chiefs of Staff and members of the Defense Department who are required to have accountability to the relevant committees, and I'm sure they're doing that.
I do hold responsible in the sense of the supplying the weapons to people who did it. We'll have that discussion. I don't think we need a wider war in the Middle East. That's not what I'm looking for.
Former President Donald Trump blamed President Joe Biden for this weekend's Hamas assault on Israel during Monday remarks to a crowd in the resort town of Wolfboro, New Hampshire. The war, in which Israel is now laying siege to the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip, happened for 3 reasons, Trump said. Iran reaping oil revenue from relaxed sanctions enforcement, our country's perceived weakness during Biden's term, and the U.S. freeing up $6 billion in Iranian funds for humanitarian efforts as part of a prisoner swap.
Meandering campaign speech yesterday in New Hampshire. Trump also threatened to break Biden's nose, compared himself to Nelson Mandela, and promised that if reelected, he would ban immigrants from entering the United States if they, quote, don't like our religion.
It was Joe Biden with his weakness and what he did with Iran and others that caused the attack on Israel. We're dealing with stupid people. Dealing with stupid people. He funded Hamas, Hezbollah abroad, while he launched a war on patriotic citizens at home. You know what I do with him? Oh, I do. I'd hit him right in that fake nose. That fake nose. They'd have plastic lying all over the floor. On day 1, I will immediately restore and expand the Trump travel ban. I will implement strong ideological screening of all immigrants. If you hate America, if you want to abolish Israel, if you don't like our religion, then we don't want you in our country and you are not getting in, right?
Saying that Biden is laughed at all over the world, Trump pointed to his own sanctions enforcement and unilateral withdrawal from the multi-nation Iran nuclear deal as evidence that he would be tougher on Iran if Americans elect him instead of Biden in 2024. At the same time, he portrayed Biden and his administration as being out of touch, noting that National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said less than 2 weeks ago that the Middle East is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades. Biden administration officials and Democrats have said that Iran accelerated its development of a nuclear weapon after Trump withdrew the U.S. from the Iran nuclear deal. Trump's imposition of sanctions also failed to curb Iran's development of its nuclear capability, and that none of the $6 billion in funds, which are payments for oil purchases that belong to Iran, have been released. Sen. Tammy Duckworth, D.L., a national co-chair of Biden's re-election campaign, pushed back on Trump. With each and every lie, Donald Trump further proves he is too dangerous to lead the United States on the world stage. Duckworth, who is a veteran and a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, said in a statement released by the Biden campaign. During his remarks Monday, Trump repeatedly portrayed Biden as the central actor in a crooked family criminal enterprise, despite a lack of evidence that Biden has committed any crime, and conversely as mentally incapacitated, dumb as a rock, and a puppet of former President Barack Obama.
Listen, but we've been right about almost everything. Do you ever see that? Trump is right about everything. I hope I'm not right about World War III, because you're very close to World War III. I'm not predicting it, but I'm saying you're very close. We have a man negotiating for us who can't put 2 sentences together. He can't see the stage. He can't find the stairs to get off the stage. And I'm not going to imitate him, because every time I imitate him, they say he couldn't find his way. It's true. It's true. True, Robert. It's true. 2 weeks ago, I did one of the greatest imitations. I imitated him. You know, he finishes his speech. His speeches last for about 3 minutes because, you know, his gasoline sort of runs out a little bit. It's a little bit like an electric car, isn't it? You know, it doesn't go far. Doesn't go far. Got a couple of problems. Doesn't go far. No, but he finished his speech, and I did this great imitation. You know, the way he always points, like, huh. And then he walks in a different direction. But I did it. He goes like, huh. And then
Emphasizing Obama's middle name, Trump said the problems underlying the war in Israel were caused, in my opinion, by his boss, Barack Hussein Obama. Both in his speech and on his Truth Social account, Trump wondered about the possibility that terrorist attacks could be launched on U.S. soil. The same people that raided Israel are pouring into our once beautiful USA through our totally open southern border at record numbers, he wrote. Are they planning an attack within our country? Crooked Joe Biden and his boss, Barack Hussein Obama, did this to us. A senior U.S. official who is familiar with this area said this claim was false. While the exact number of people crossing the U.S. southern border who may have ties to Hamas remains classified, the official said the idea that Hamas is pouring across the border or has increased in numbers recently is demonstrably false. Trump made little secret of his broader disdain for Biden, accusing the president again, without evidence, of marshalling prosecutions against him. Trump, who faces 4 separate trials in federal and state courts, said explicitly that his situation would justify him using the power of the presidency to go after political adversaries. That means I could do that if I win, he said.
Crooked Joe Biden's only campaign strategy is indicting me. That's all they can do. Keep indicting him on nonsense. Going on extended vacations and sleep, sleep, sleep. That's what he wants to do. He wants to sleep and he wants to go to the beach and sleep. He thinks he looks good in a bathing suit. He doesn't. Crooked Joe Biden is totally controlled by China, Ukraine, and various other countries. They know everything about him, all of his misdeeds, and there are many. He's a corrupt person. He's a compromised president who is leading our country to hell. In the true sense, and I don't know if you know what this means, he is a Manchurian candidate. Trust me on that, it's not good.
Follow the latest news on our channel, and don't forget to comment on this video.